Hope is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Way to Break Free. I am your host, Angie Pedigo. I'm really excited yet again. I know you hear me say that each week, but y'all, this is like just awesome to be able to get to hear all these amazing stories. And so I want to introduce my special guest today, Mr. Darren Blankenship. Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Darren, man, he has such an amazing testimony. First time I met Darren, I don't even know if he knew I was in the audience, but
Didn't know.
He was sharing his testimony at a drug court graduation not too far from me up in Kentucky. And I was so moved. Like, it was one of the most moving testimonies that I've heard. And so I immediately came home and I was like, he's got to come on the show. So here we are months later. Can't wait for you to just get a little dose of what I got to hear that night. So Darren, let's jump in.
Okay. All right. Where do we start?
I'm so excited. Take us back. Take us to where it all started, because there's no telling what you're going to hear today, guys. Buckle up. That's all I know.
Yeah.
To say God has moved in his life in such miraculous ways. So we're just kind of going to let the Holy Spirit lead today, and whichever amazing parts of it that he gets to share, that's where we're going. So take us back. Where does it start?
All right. Well, it starts on a little farm in Adolphus, Kentucky, right up the road from here. Blankenship Beefmaster Farm.
Oh, nice.
I lived there with my parents, my grandparents, two sets of aunt and uncles. We all lived on the less than 200-acre farm.
Nice.
That's where I grew up. So I had an amazing childhood, a big creek running through it. And I lived right next to my grandfather, cattle, tobacco, all the typical, farm country boy things that, you people dream of getting to grow up around.
Yeah.
And I had grandparents and parents that were extremely strong in their faith. I was taught very well. I had the best influences that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
My dad was not only my football coach, but he turned into being my youth pastor,
Nice.
Which is kind of funny how this story comes back around for me. Because
Right.
But I had the greatest examples of what it meant to be a Christian, to follow Jesus growing up. And I was very involved and had a very strong faith when I was young. Middle school, when I started to hit high school, that's when I started to run into some problems. The influences around you change. Peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And you grow up a little. The world is not the fluffy, perfect little place that you thought it was when you was a kid. And you see a little bit of the darker side, and it's it's a bit of an adjustment,
Yeah.
and you can easily let that steer you the wrong direction. And I had a lot of issues with feeling like I wanted to fit in, like which all kids do.
Oh yeah.
It's hard being that age when you hit to be a teenager.
Yes.
And where I'd been involved in the church and chrysalises and all these things, when I got to high school, I was taught that that's not cool. It seemed like the uncool thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So before I knew it, it was something that I started trying to avoid talking to people about.
Yes.
And I joined the football team, which I'd always played football, and I wanted to be a part of the cool crowd. And the older kids invited me to go out, and they're even with the older kids.
So you're feeling like,
yes,
I'm the stuff.
I'm in, right? I'm accepted. But of course, you're going to a party somewhere where they're drinking and doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first time I drank until I blacked out. I don't remember it.
Wow.
But they seemed to, for some reason, think that I put on a show, evidently, which, and accepted me. I was in. So there was no turning back from there. I felt like I felt like I had to be this person.
Do you feel like did you feel like the pressure revved up on you to
perform?
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like, this is who I got to be. Mm-hmm.
That's who they wanted.
I was afraid to be anybody else at that point. So that began my life of addiction, freshman in high school. I mean, I quickly moved to marijuana. I quickly moved to, cocaine, any other kind of drug you can imagine. I became the guy that if it was there, I would do it, and at a young, way too young to be subjected to that stuff. But, I made it through high school. I barely graduated. I quit football as a senior, and people didn't realize, they thought, well, he's a little wild, a little different. My parents didn't know. Nobody realized really what I was slipping into because I hid it well.
Yes. I think most kids do.
Yes.
Parents sometimes seem to be the last ones to really know.
Yeah. We're definitely not going to tell our parents.
No.
That's the way you feel about it. And by the time that I was ready to graduate high school, I was a full blown addict. Mm-hmm. I truly was. I had to be I had to be on something every day to function. Mm. I felt like I couldn't enter society without something.
So saying that, did it go from when you say I had to be on something to function, it became even less about being the entertainment at the parties to now I just got to be able to get up and make it through this day.
Yes. And I don't think I realized it was that. I was still telling myself, at that age, you're indestructible. You can, you think you are. So I don't think I realized it was that, but that's what it was. It was every day. That become my life in a lot of ways. And, I pretended to have another life other than that. I went to college for a little while. I sold my books the first week. I didn't tell my parents, and just roamed the campus, because I was lost.
Yeah.
And they didn't know it. And my father has a pest control business, and I'd worked for him some during the summer, and I decided to do that. And I love doing that. And I was proud of it. My grandfather started it. So I began working that, in that pest control industry with him. And then my addiction began to get worse and worse. And eventually I tore my Achilles. Mm. And when I did, that's when I found opioids.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I dabbled in them, but I'd never been in them to that level. And that was the beginning of my destruction. That was the beginning. They took over my life really quick to the point, I was taking unbelievable amounts.
I want to stress something there. A lot of times people enter addiction. They'll say it's not the alcohol, it's not the pot, it's not like I don't have problems with that. But all addiction starts with that. Like the addictive brain's triggered at that point.
Yes.
And then you eventually stumble on your DOC, your drug of choice.
Yes. But don't let that make you take the other's life.
Right.
I mean, look, my mother's side has a long line of addiction, mm-hmm. alcohol and drugs, mm-hmm. and I wasn't really around them much. Mm-hmm. They didn't let me be around a lot of them much for a good reason.
Yeah.
So I don't think I realized, and that's there too. That's there.
Yes.
And I should have took that more seriously. And alcohol was the beginning though. Don't let it may not have been what sent me over the edge, but it was the beginning of letting something else, control my life.
When we have addictive brains, we will relapse mentally before we relapse on substances.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I just wanted to highlight that for a second.
You're fine. But from that point on, that's when really things started to go down. I had a daughter shortly after that. So I continued to try to keep it together.
Mm-hmm. Still trying to hide it? Or
yes. And I hid it. There were signs of it a few years later that my father knew, but he thought I got a little help. And they didn't understand, that they hadn't dealt with addiction. They didn't understand what I was going through. And they didn't know what it would take to get through it or the state that I was truly in. I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
So, and I continued to work for him. And, I was a father. I was their softball coach. I was involved, I was pretending, but I wasn't really there. When I look back, I don't even hardly have any of those memories, really. I know I was there, but I don't remember because, I was under the influence of large amounts of opiates the entire time.
You just feel like you were somebody else, that you're watching the life of somebody else at this point.
Yes, that's kind of what it feels like, which thing to have to do. But I mean, that's the way it was. And that was destroying my life. And it began to get to a point where I couldn't hardly stay employed. I mean, my dad, because I was good at my job, and my dad fought for me as long as he could, And I was getting to this point where I was like, I couldn't even keep up the addiction because I was taking such a high level. It was hard to find that much. Like I look back at pictures of me and I was yellow. It's a wonder that I continued to function. I would take what a full prescription someone would get for a month. I'd take it in a day.
Wow.
I was at that point. It's amazing how quick you can end up with that kind of tolerance. Yes. Not even mean to. And it started out with me not meaning to, truly.
Yeah.
But with my addictive tendencies, it quickly. So someone gave me this bright idea during this time that a great way to kick the opiate addiction was methamphetamine. Just a little. Just a little. Which is crazy that I ever would have thought. But I was in such a state then. I wasn't thinking clearly anyway. I drifted so far away from God. I was not involved in church. I wasn't involved. I was a very lost person.
So were you wanting to kick the opiates?
I wanted to, because you're in that point where you're doing it to survive. It was misery. And if anybody's ever been through opioid withdrawal, it is the worst.
It's horrible.
You shut down. There would be days that I couldn't go to work because I didn't have what I needed. And if I did go to work, I couldn't get anything done. And I was like, this has got to stop. And they're like, oh. And I had not really dabbled in anything like that. Right. I never thought I would. Of course, I say I never would. But I was desperate, so I tried it, and it worked. I mean, it got me through it. I thought that's what it was doing, but really, it's you just picking one poison for another,
tricking your brain,
And that was right around 30. I'd never been to jail yet. I hadn't been to jail yet. That's coming up. So I thought this will be okay. And that quickly, that's whenever I lost control, right about 30, right in that area. That's when I completely lost control. And I truly dived into the madness, and become more lost than ever. And things fell apart quick by then. Within a couple of years, I lost my job, and then they gave me the job back, and then I lost the job again. They tried so hard, and I ended up finally getting my first methamphetamine charge. And I'd already, it needed to happen. That needed to happen. That I realized that was God. I mean, I actually go to church with the officer who arrested me the first time. Where he actually was part of my bachelor party when we went to a Reds game together. Wow. So that's coming up too. But little did he know that's how how it ended up with us. But I got my first methamphetamine charge, and then I was done with the family, and they realized the state of things and what I was probably putting my daughter through, which was horrible, because I was a mess all the time. Yeah. So they finally took me to court, and all they had to say was, you got to pass a drug test to leave here with your daughter. And that was the end of that, because I could not.
Yeah.
And, I was very bitter at them for that, but thank God that they did. That's what needed to happen. She didn't need to be involved in that.
Yes.
I learned later that she actually told him, I need you
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is one of the things that I think while people are in active addiction, that when somebody comes to help the child and get defensive and not because you don't want to let them go, but
I was being selfish, but I didn't realize I was being selfish.
and it's
I loved her. Yeah.
It's almost where the point of where you have to admit that the to the level that it's gotten to, and that is we try to fight that.
Yeah. Yeah. But there was no fighting it,
Yeah.
And from that point on, that's when I really dived into my rock because it was all felt like a hope was lost. That was all I had left. That was everything,
Yes.
And I didn't have any kind of relationship with God in my life. So I come to this point where I was like, I'm just going to do this until it kills me.
Yes.
I'm going to do everybody a favor is what I felt.
Oh, I want to pick back up from there. We're going to take a quick break, but that's a good point to come back and kind of elaborate on a little bit. So we'll hear a word from our sponsors and be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBN Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. Right before the break, you were just about to hit on a subject, Darren, that just in coaching a lot of people in recovery, I see people get to that point of, I just want to give up. Like I've done too much. It's too far gone. I can't come back. I've heard too many people. And so I'll just ride this to the end, like the give up point.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm kind of hearing you describe. Take us from there. Like,
I mean, that's where I was at. It was, I didn't think I deserved. I also didn't think, not only that, but I didn't think I deserved to get to recover from that, because of all the things I'd done. I just felt like I've done too much.
I felt like there was no redemption.
Right. No redemption, which is a train of thought you have whenever God's done in your life.
Yes.
And in a way, I'd forgot it. It's like I'd forgot everything that I'd been taught.
Did you ever think about going to God in any of this? I mean, like, did a thought ever cross your mind?
Sometimes there was a couple times early on, maybe, that I prayed to God, but it's those prayers that you do in the last minute, and they're not genuine because you're not ready to change.
Yes.
It's almost like you're asking, "Do this for me," which is super selfish thing to do, but I mean, we do. We're human. We do that.
Yes.
But no, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. because of all the influences around me, I almost was at a point where I was like, there's no God. This story I've been told, the story, because you can quickly dive into things that make you believe.
Meth will take you to that point.
It'll take you to that.
It will take you to that point.
It'll take you to that point. It'll make you think a lot of things that aren't true. It's amazing. I look back at how I thought then, and it's amazing the things I believe and I thought, and the paranoia that it causes, all those things, extreme paranoia. But I thought that it was just over. It's like, because to me, I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I've ruined it, and I come from a family, and none of them never even been to jail in the Blankenship family. Never ever been, no addicts, none of those things. So I felt like I just completely humiliated their, them and that in a way that I think that was still me being selfish because, all they wanted was for me to get better.
Yeah. They weren't mad at you for that. It's just,
they were hurt.
Yeah.
Greatly hurt. But I decided to go as hard as I could, and then I entered some truly dark places, I started running with some extremely dark people, going to some places you definitely should never go. I think I was almost asking for it. And I remember, I got arrested, of course, many more times after that, and I had more meth charges. And I remember I got in this vehicle with a guy who had pounds of methamphetamine and guns in his vehicle, and I had warrants on me. I should have not been out, and we went to the Minute Mart at 1:00 in the morning, which is not smart because in Scottsville the cops are always at the Minute Mart at 1:00 in the morning. And then I get out of the car, so they see me. So of course they try to arrest me, and I gave up all hope and don't care. So we run. We end up in a high pursuit chase, with several police cars behind us, and we run from the Minute Mart in Allen County all the way, actually right up the road here in Rocky Mount. Somehow we ended up here, and we ended up somehow getting far enough ahead that we ditched the vehicle, and we crawled out in this ditch, and we actually end up in this burnout trailer or something, just right on the edge of the road. And I'm laying there, and I look over, and I'm sitting there clutching this huge bag of drugs. And then right beside him is all these guns, and I'm thinking, it was like, how did I get here? What am I going to do if these police officers come here? Am I going to shoot one of them? Of course not.
Yeah.
That's not who I am.
Yeah.
I mean, is this worth this?
Yeah.
I remember it hitting me. What am I doing? And it was.
Do you feel like the scales were falling off your eyes in that moment?
Yes, it was the first moment where it was just like, I think God was trying to say, look at yourself. This is not you,
Yeah.
And now, amazingly, they didn't find us.
Yeah.
Of course, being on meth and being in a whole nother world, I decided to go to the food line a week later. And when I walked out of the food line, they were waiting for me, of course, because someone called law because they were looking for me. Yeah. Of course, they were looking for me after that. And I went to jail, got another meth charge. And, somehow I got to get out of jail then, but I had a charge for trafficking. And I wasn't, and that's in a situation where I put myself in those situations. I wasn't even really trafficking. I was just in a car with someone that was, so I got that charge.
Yes.
And I went before the judge to settle my first meth charge. And in that short amount of time, because it takes a couple of years, yes, I'd gathered up several more. Yeah. And when she saw that, she said, "Oh, Mr. Blankenship, you're not," I was going to go home that day.
Yeah.
She's like, "No, you're not going home today. You're going to jail. And there will be no bond. You'll sit there until we decide where you're going to go." And she told me, she said, "I'm just going to tell you right now, based on these charges, you'll be lucky to see your daughter get married, much less graduate." And my daughter was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
13 maybe at that time. And that just like,
Yeah.
That I needed that.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God she did that.
Yes.
And they sent me to jail, and it was just the hopelessness at that point. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, in some ways it was relief because they locked me up and I couldn't.
There's worse things than going to jail.
Yes, and they locked me up, and I think that it's how I know God was working the whole time, because they put me in a cell with a guy that I knew, mm-hmm. and he knew my daughter, and he loved my daughter, and he was going through his own struggles, but mm-hmm. he said, you're done. And you can get drugs in jail. Sometimes it happens. It's just reality. And he said there will be no drugs. He told everybody there'll be no drugs in this cell because this man's going to get. Oh. Yeah, I thank him every day because I'm actually his sponsor now. But he said that, and in a way that was a relief, because it was just like, it's just time to lay down. And I hadn't been sober in 20 years. I hadn't really had a clear mind, and I lay down and I slept for days. And I remember getting up, and it was the first time that I felt halfway clear-headed.
I got to ask a question. Yeah. Is this the first time that you felt somebody accepted you, like stood with you in a healthy way? Because, to going back to how this all started and being accepted.
And this is a person that I've been in the madness with, that we had been through a lot. And for him to say that, it was just like, I didn't even argue with him. It was just like, it was almost like a relief. Like there's
somebody stood up. Somebody. Yeah.
So I remember waking up, and something come over me, and I was like, I got to talk to God right now. And I remember I fallen off that block, and I got the floor on my knees. And I didn't say much. I just said, God, I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to hurt anybody else. I don't want to live this way anymore. Just show me the way. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so far removed from being involved with the church or living like a Christian or any of those things that, in a way, it was like it was my first time. And I was just like, just show me the way. That's all I said. Mm-hmm. And I felt this peace come over me. And I felt a peace the rest of the time I was in there. And amazingly, a few weeks later, drug court shows up. I don't know if you know what drug court is.
Yes.
And they decide, well, we'll just interview you. There was interviews of other people, and they're interviewing me. And I don't think I realized that was God working at the time then too. And they interviewed me, and and I done made peace with, like, I'm going to be here for years. Yeah. And I made peace with that though. I had this peace come over me. They had a Bible, which half the pages were ripped out, but I was trying to. I was
reading what you can.
Right, I read a little of it. I was trying to start to change the way I think and actually trust God. And thank goodness for my parents, because that stuff never left me. Mm-hmm.
That goes back to that verse: raise a child in the way you should go.
If you have a child struggling, just remember, even if you don't think it's making a difference, it is. Yes. Because my grandparents and my parents taught me in a way that wanted to hit the bottom. Yeah. I knew where to go. Yeah. Yeah. I knew where to go. Yeah. But anyway, they accepted me into drug court. So I'm getting out. And thank goodness, because I remember, I need to go back because I left one thing out. When I prayed, right before I prayed, I can't believe I left this out. I got to talk to my daughter, and they wouldn't let me talk to her. Yeah. And she had tried to. Every time I tried to call the jail, but of course you can't do that. Yeah. So I called back, and Mom and Dad wasn't near the phone, so she got the phone. And she told me, she said, "What are you doing?"
Oh, and she's 12.
Yeah, she may have been 13. Yeah. By that time, but she was like, "What are you doing?" She was like, "I love you, Mom, but I need my dad back. You got to come back." Oh. And that, in some ways, that was my lowest moment. Yeah. But I needed to hear that. Mm-hmm. And I tried to talk to her. So once again, I think God made sure she was by that phone. Yes. And that's when I got on my knees. Honestly, that's when that feeling came over me. I forgot to say that. That's so important to the story. But anyway, of course, I accept drug court. Everybody in there says, "Don't accept it. It's all this work. It's set up to fail. Just ride your time out." I'm like, my time out. They were talking like 12 years. I'm going to do 4 of those for sure, even if I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm like, crazy. I'm taking drug court. I'm going to give this a try. I wanted to see my daughter at the time. I just wanted to see her. And they let me out. And I remember I walked there, and I ended up walking to an uncle's house in town and had him drive me to the ballpark, and I got to watch my daughter's championship softball game.
Aww.
Which was amazing. It was one of the best feelings ever. And she was still a little, she wasn't sure, but she talked to me. She was kind of happy I was there, but they didn't know what to expect because they had this version of me for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, when I got to have that moment, I was like, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
There's no going back. I can't go back there.
Yeah.
And I still didn't know how. I still didn't, I don't think truly know how to have a true relationship with God yet, but I was getting there. I was on my way. So, I got into drug court, and I absolutely hated it because I'd lived in this world where there was no rules, no structure for so long that, there's tons of structure.
Drug court's never easy, but the rewards are great.
It is. I ain't gonna lie. It's one of the hardest things that I ever done in the beginning.
Yes.
But it is one of the most rewarding things that ever happened to me in my life because you got to do all these meetings and you got to report and you got curfews and drug testing constantly. And I was like, and I got a little whiny about it. I was forgetting how lucky I was, how much God had blessed me to put me in this spot. I still don't think I was truly grasping. Here's God's plan right in front of you.
That's. I can't wait to see where this goes from here. So we're gonna take another break. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Darren, just before the break, you're talking about you accepted drug court. It was hard. You're doing all the work. What were the rewards from that?
Well, during that time, the rewards were they were not very happy with me because although I wasn't using, they call it the dry addict, because I still was living that way. I was still in that mentality. And I was struggling, and they were about ready to kick me out because of silly things, missing appointments. And I couldn't figure out what I was missing, which is crazy that I was thinking that way because, I was still not truly grasping, here's God's. And I was almost on my way out of drug court. They about had enough of me. And then, here's where the story gets good. This is where the good stuff comes. There was this girl that worked for my dad.
You help yourself.
It was India. And, I'd seen her before, but I'd never seen her with sober eyes. And I was like, this is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life.
Aww.
Which, and I truly thought that way. And, oh my God. And, even though you probably don't really need a relationship that early, you know how it is.
Right.
I was like, I've got to, I think I'm in love with this girl. That's what you thought. So, I tried to talk to her. She's, she don't play those games. She was just like, no, I'm not interested in that. And she probably wasn't sure about me either. But hey, she invited me to church. And my dad had invited me to church because they all go to Victory Hill.
Yes.
But the girl got me to go, because I was like, I'll follow her anywhere. That's really what it was about. And my dad had been trying to get me to go because my parents were super supportive. They were right there with me. I truly have the prodigal son story.
Yes.
From both fathers.
Yeah.
Because they were waiting with open arms. That's my favorite story. So I go to church. And it's amazing. I hadn't been to church in 20 years at least. And they were so kind to me. It was like, because I had that view of myself, like people were looking at you like you're this. I got none of that. None of it. And, but then I'm watching India and she's like this light in every room she goes into. Right. Everyone knows her. She's just this amazing person. So I'm like, I'm coming back. I had this good time and there's this amazing girl. So I keep going and I meet Amy. And Amy Payne's like, hey, I'm one of you. And I'm trying to start this life recovery meeting. I just want us to get together. And I would love for you to come. And I was like, okay. And there was 4 of us in a room. That's all it was. But it was amazing. It's like that was one of the things that changed my life. That's when I got it.
Yeah.
That's when I truly started to find God again.
Yeah.
And not just there, but between that and India is involved in everything amazing you can imagine. Like every charity, everything involving the church. She's always the light in the room everywhere she goes. And I started seeing her, like she was so happy. She was so happy. And it was her relationship. It was that relationship with God that she had. It's the way that she lived her life. And I was like, I want that. I want what she's got. And Amy was on Club Night. I want what Amy's got, And truthfully, they're the ones that led me in the direction. My life drastically began to change from that moment right there. Started doing great in drug court. They loved me then, because I had this whole different. I found my relationship with God. I found out how, and I learned how to forgive myself, and I learned that I was worthy of happiness. And I learned how to find joy in doing things that, serving others, like the joy in that.
Yes, if we want to keep it, you got to give it away, right?
Yes, it's the key.
Yeah.
I mean that's what keeps India and Amy happy all the time. That's all they do.
Yeah,
they're the most giving people I've ever met in my life. I look up to them as much as anybody. My grandpa, my father, India and Amy. Those are
Yeah.
But my life truly began to change, and the rooms grew quickly for the life recovery.
Yes.
And to the point we didn't have room. We didn't
awesome.
we didn't have room there anymore. That's where the Dream Center came from, because we needed somewhere else to meet. It started as just, hey, we want to have life recovery meetings, or if they want AA meetings or whatever they want, we want a place they can go, because there was nowhere in Scottsville.
Yes.
There was nowhere to go. I mean, when I was in drug court, one of the things that really discouraged those people, because transportation's an issue, it's a huge issue, and you had to have 3 meetings. You had to go to Bowling Green. So you had to keep your full-time job, all your meetings with drug court, and somehow make it to Bowling Green. And I saw a lot of people that got discouraged and just gave up because they didn't like, I can't get to Bowling Green 3 days a week. So we gave them, an option close. And COVID happened, and we didn't shut down. We kept going, and people needed a place. People needed a place to go.
Yes,
and the rooms just got full, so we had to have the Dream Center. And little did we know what the Dream Center would become. We had no idea how fast it would grow. Now, before I get to that, on top of that, I'm speaking one night to the life recovery group. We went to eat together to kind of celebrate, and the youth pastor at Victor Hill at that time, his father owned the restaurant we was at, so he's there.
Yes,
and he slips in and overhears me speaking and interacting with them there. And he comes to me and he's like, "I need you to come to my house. We need to talk." And I had no idea. I was like, "Oh, what did I do?" That's what you're thinking. What did I do?
I'm called to the principal's office.
And he brings me to his house. He's like, "I feel like God's telling me that you may be the next youth pastor." I was like,
"Wow."
I said, that's not a thought that ever had even once come into my mind. I'm going to be a youth pastor. And I mean, I thought with my past, who would let me be, who would want me to be a youth pastor? He's like, "Well, just come and check it out. I want you to come." And I went. I fell in love with it, and it just shows you that if you just quit trying to make your own way and just say, "God, show me the way." When I said, "God, just show me the way,"
He did.
He did, and it's one of my that youth building, the Life House we call it, is one of my favorite places in the world. We've grown from 20 kids to 70. 70 kids every week. And as crazy as I thought he was, it was exactly where I needed to be.
What's so amazing about that is you mentioned in the beginning, your dad was a youth pastor, and then although you've taken 2 different trails to get to where you're in God's calling for your life, but wow, and how He can use the places that you have been, experiences that you have been for youth. I mean, that's where it starts, is when you're 9 to 12 years old.
And I've got 7th graders through 12. Yeah. And the things that they are dealing with blows. I mean, I look at how I let that influence me during those years, and they've got so many. I mean,
it's way worse.
Their phone.
Yes.
I didn't have to deal with that. We didn't have something in our hands showing us, your phone everywhere you look is definitely something telling you that being a Christian ain't cool.
Yeah.
And a million other horrible things that they go through, and bullying and all the things that they go through.
Yes. That is beautiful. Like, for God to just pull you up out of that ditch.
Yes.
And now you are just pastoring 70 plus youth. Like,
I thought they ain't ready for these stories, but they want to hear the truth.
Yes.
They won't want anything for somebody to just be honest with.
Yes.
And the first day I was there, I told them my story. And there was some, their jaws were dropped a little bit, but they knew from that moment, this guy is going to tell us the truth.
Yes, because you're raw. Truth will set you free. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Now I feel like, I don't just have 2 children. I've got 72. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
I get that.
I love them so much. So I'm now the youth pastor at Victory Hill.
That's awesome.
It's one of the greatest things that I could ever imagine getting to do. And then, I'm the coordinator at the Dream Center.
Yes.
And the Dream Center, is, I know you've heard about the Dream Center.
Oh, yes.
And Amy's probably talked about it here before, but
yes, she has.
Turning from that to help with our feeding program to all the things that we get to be involved in. It's just, it's amazing.
The Dream Center is literally serving as the hands and feet of Jesus.
It is.
It just is.
It is.
It's beautiful. Check it out. It's Victory Hills Dream Center up in Scottsville, Kentucky, and it's you guys do amazing things, especially in the winter when you guys were opening up for the homeless and taking care of needs. It was just,
and really that was not the plan, but we're just like, hey, you can't close.
All God's looking for is willing. He'll make the way.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back from the break. Darren, I want to jump into, let's fast forward to you in India. Like when you guys decided, we're going to get married, we're going to tie the knot. Tell us about that.
Well, it took a year before she would even date me. She said, you can come to every function you want to. And you know, she was seeing my heart.
Yes.
But she was
going to make sure you were walking it out.
She finally agreed to date me. And by the time that had happened, we knew each other well enough. So, she said yes, amazingly. And she decided, you know, she was a little older, 34, but at that time, but she was like, I want to have kids, you know, I would like to. So I'm going to go to the doctor just to see, you know, this was right before we got married. And when she went to the doctor told her that she would never have kids. It was impossible. He even drew a diagram up. He wasn't very nice about it. He drew a diagram up that showed all the reasons why it was impossible for her to have children.
Wow.
And that if she did even become pregnant, that the baby would quickly die. And there was no way. So she was heartbroken. And, you know, I'd been through, I'd seen a lot of miracles anyway. So I knew, you know, let's not give up hope yet. And I convinced her to go to another doctor. And she finally went to another doctor right before we got married. And he said, this is how we knew he was our doctor. Because he said, is God your doctor? Oh. Because he said, I'm pretty sure God's the only one that decides whether. Oh. And so he said, there's our guy. That's our guy. He's like, it's going to be my personal mission to help you through this. And he said, it may take a long time. I can't promise you it'll happen. He said, but nobody gets to decide but God. Wow. And I was like, that's our guy.
That's my guy.
So he's like, okay, we'll just see. You know, it might take years, but maybe this will happen. So we got married. Within 2 weeks, she was pregnant. Within 2 weeks, it was almost like 2 weeks to the mark. She was pregnant.
Wow!
So there's that miracle that they said can never happen. So Now, unfortunately, she had a lot of complications, and at 7 months, our son Maverick, our little boy, was not going to survive unless they took him right from him. So she had a C-section. Now they warned us he will not. He will not. You're not going to hear a cry. He's not going to be breathing. This is going to be a touch and go situation.
So he's born early, 2 months early.
2 months early.
Yeah,
and he comes out crying at 3 pounds.
But he's not supposed to be breathing.
Not supposed to be breathing.
But he's crying.
Comes up crying at 3 pounds.
Do you ever think you would rejoice to hear a cry as much as you did that?
No, the rest of them ain't been as cool as that one. That one's the coolest one for sure. And the doctor was amazed at that. And it was this little miracle. Now, he quickly dropped, like to 2 pounds, 9 ounces, because that always happens at first. And he was in the incubator, and it was hard,
I can imagine, like 2 pounds. Like
yeah, I could cover him with my hand. I could literally make him disappear. But there he was, and it was a miracle.
Yeah.
It was really hard. It was a month in the NICU. And he defied the odds all the way, while he was in the NICU. But right after he was born, we had another situation, because the doctor came to us and he said, I hate to have to tell you this, because he looked normal when he came out. He said, but we can't find the testes. He said, we've done every scan. And, we might have to start looking, is this a girl, or what our situation is?
Yeah.
And that's the devil felt that. He grabbed me in that moment. And I was devastated, because all you can think about with the state of the world today is, what is my son going to go through? Do I have a son? What's his life going to be like? Or, what?
And you had ultrasounds up to this point showing that this is a boy.
but it was almost like they were worried that he hadn't developed. Maybe, it could be partly developed one way and partly developed the other, is what they were saying. And it was devastating. And I tried to keep a good face on. My wife was trying to keep a good face on, but I had to leave the hospital that day. And I didn't tell her. I told her it was to go get my computer, but it was to go cry. I had to go cry. And I was just like, God, why? After all we've been through, why? So I went to the church to pick up my computer, and I was going to slip in. And, of course, Pastor Mason, our executive pastor, is there. And he comes running in, tell me all about it. Tell me about the baby. And I just broke down. And I told him, and Chad, our lead pastor, and all the rest of our staff come in, and I told him, this is what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. I just don't know what the difference between up and down right now. I'm just lost. And Chad looked at me, and he said, Pastor Chad said, God has had you every step of the way. What makes you think he's going to have you right now? And he said, we're going to pray. And we're not going to pray for everything to work out. We're going to pray for Maverick to be made whole right now. Yes. We're going to pray for him. We got in a circle, and we prayed. And I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt it. And I felt this calm come over me as he prayed. And I didn't know what was coming when I drove back to that hospital, but I felt this calm over me. The peace. And when I got there, it was time to go see Maverick. And we went up to see him, and I asked, if they'd done any scans yet, and the nurse was like, oh, they haven't told you. I can't believe they haven't come told you. They just done some scans, and everything's there. Everything's fine. She said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to explain it, but everything's fine. All boy. And they done tests afterward to try to understand what happened there. They still don't know. But I know what happened.
You know what happened.
I know exactly what happened there. We got in that room and we prayed, and God answered. And
parents, this is what it looks like when you go to war for your kids.
That's
right. To get them out of the clutches of hardship, what, like, this is what it looks like. That is a powerful message. Well, we're about to wrap up. Man, what a good note to end on, a miracle.
Yes.
Another miracle that your life is full of miracles from God, and how he can use you today for that is so beautiful. What would you leave listeners with today?
Whatever don't ever give up hope. If there's someone that was in my position, don't ever give up hope. And don't ever think that that the love you're showing them, or that the love of God that you're trying to show them, or that you're trying to teach them, don't think that it's not making a difference, because it made a difference in my life. Just don't give up. Just don't give up.
That's awesome. If you're struggling today, reach out. Somebody somewhere, reach out to and find a group. Go to church. Go somewhere. A support group, recovery, whatever it is for you. You trying to find that today. And parents, if you're out there worrying about those kids, don't give up hope. God is a God of miracles, and He does them all the time. And Jesus is the healer. So He'll do the healing. He's the way, the truth, and the life. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank you for watching Bold Brave TV, and we really appreciate it. Like, subscribe to go get our notifications when we go live each week on The Way to Break Free. We'll see you next time.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.